welcome to episode 16 of Mr. Industries Ford Falcon 351 Crusty Wagon Project. Now, before I get stuck into the rear quarter welding repairs on my wagon, I need to talk about the state of my other projects, which I've been neglecting ever since I started this wagon project. Now, I tried to start my LS powered BMW up last night to show a mate of mine that it actually works, and the battery was dead, which was unfortunate. So a jumper pack got that to come back to life, but I couldn't charge the battery up last night. So what I found worked with my sedan when I neglected it for so long the battery went dead was I had to put the battery into the sedan and jump start that to get it to come back to life, because the alternator of the sedan will push enough current through the battery to bring it back to life so that I can slow charge it again. Because what I found last night was my BMW battery would not accept a trickle charge because it was too dead, and as far as the charger was concerned it wasn't even there. So this morning I attempted to jump start this car with my battery pack, which also failed me. So I had to pull the battery out of the wagon, which was the only battery that's been getting any love lately, and use that to jump start this car, and then by default use the alternator to charge up this battery. So hopefully, now that I've done that, and you got to miss all of that Cleveland goodness, because I couldn't even hear myself think, let alone record this while it was running, hopefully the E30 battery will take a charge, and after that battery's charged I'll charge that battery, and then I'll have 3 functional batteries for my projects if I desire to start them at any time in the future, which would be super handy. And as I had hoped, the charger now sees that the battery is there and it is giving it boost current to get the battery to charge up. So hopefully I've salvaged this battery that's not particularly old, and it'd be a shame for it to be fatally wounded so soon after I bought it, just because it sits around doing nothing all the time. Now that my XC sedan is safely packed away, I must admit the engine of my sedan sounds kind of lumpy and clattery and discordant by comparison to the one in my wagon, which sounds crisp and mint. So the sedan engine, whilst I know the compression ratios aren't great, it runs, there's a bit of lift-to-tick going on, and I really do need to throw money at it to make it perform up to its potential, I guess you'd call it, because it's always been a bit lackluster. But that's another project for another time, because today it's wagon time. And hot on the heels of my right rear quarter panel repair, today is a left rear quarter panel repair, and much like last episode, behind the scenes I got cracking to do all the groundwork to get this particular panel repair done, and I'm at the point now where I need to start explaining what I've done and what I'm going to do next, so that this episode makes some kind of sense. So let's start off with what I've done so far. So I cut a couple of big chunks out of this panel here so that I could deploy them into the inner rear quarter sections of this right rear guard, because if you can recall, it was all gone through here, it was all rusted out. So what I've done is I've cut a section out of the back of that guard to go into there, much like I did on the right hand side. Then I've shaped up a couple of pieces of metal and rolled them to get the curves just right and welded them in place. You can still see the blue paint on this one. Now I've stitched this in on the inside here, and I've stitched this one in on the back as well, and I actually pulled this right out of the way so I could panel beat this into shape and place, and I've pushed it all back in and I've welded it, tack welded it into place, and that is a rough semblance of an inner guard, which meets my not particularly exacting standards. And where I'm at now is I need to cut a piece of metal out of that front guard there that fits into this gap here. And this is a bit of an odd shape, so what I've done is grab myself a rice bubble packet from inside the house, cut that panel to shape, fitted it over there roughly because I just need to get the general shape sorted out to go over the gap. And I'm going to cut that shape out of that guard over there and massage to fit. So I'll basically trim everything up so that it fits neatly in the gap, and then I'll tack it in place, hopefully butt welding everything nice and neatly together once I've got the general gist down pat. So it's going to be technical and tedious, but totally doable at this point. I was most concerned about getting all the contours correct for the inner guard, and I'm pretty satisfied with that. The contour is the same as the factory more or less. I've just used a drift, basically a round drift, and I've rolled the panel around that to get that contour to match the one that's already there. And then I've just butt welded it against the existing piece of metal that came down here that this is attached to. So it all made sense. This bit here is pretty janky, but there's not really a lot of metal left here. It's quite rusty, so you can see how that goes. If I can't get that bit to cooperate, I will steal a radius off that guard and I'll replace this whole section with a fresh radius that's not rusty. Hopefully that'll work. Alright, based on some dead reckoning, I reckon if I cut the radius out of this section here, it will mostly do what I need it to do. I might have to massage that a little bit, and obviously that'll need a massage as well. And then I'll need to start cutting everything so it fits exactly, but first things first, we'll get the basic shape right. Alright, let's see how close I got. It's going to take some finessing, but I think the general gist is there. So I'm probably going to bulge out a little bit too much there because of the shape of the guard contour, but I will do my best. And as far as I'm concerned, everything below that that contour line there is out of sight, out of mind as far as I'm concerned. I forget how time consuming it is to cut panels to suit patch panels for these projects. But what I have here is panel number 2, because panel number 1, the bump, as I put it onto the guard, didn't make much sense, so I've cut another hole in my guard and rolled the curve roughly in where I think it needs to be. And I'm just going to tack weld that in there, maybe hammer it down, or leave it as it is, because as I said earlier, everything below this line, not that concerned about how it turns out, as long as it covers the gaping rust hole. So after a spot of tack welding, that's the interim result. I'm pretty happy with that. I'll grind off the tops of all of those tacks, maybe add a few more across the back here, but overall that is looking like a nice serviceable ghetto solution for my rear quarter rust hole. And here we have the result after a bit of grinding. So yes, still satisfied with that. I'll throw some primer on that just so the welds don't get rusty, and then wrap this episode up. summary time for episode 16 of Missile Industries' Crusty Wagon 351 XE Falcon project, and that rear quarter repair is done to my satisfaction. Obviously my standards for this project aren't going to be particularly high because my goal here is to spend as little money as possible, get the whole thing rust repaired and in paint in one particular colour, or maybe two colours, white roof, blue body, and see how it goes from there. Join me next week where I pull the eyebrow off this patina guard and cut the lower off the front of it so I can repair this taxi orange guard and make one entire guard as I planned to do all the way back in episode 6 when I bought these guards for $100. Hopefully I can salvage something out of that and I'll have one functional guard